Hello, this is Steve and Tony, two lonely fat dads. That's
One
different.
is lonelier than the other.
True. We have a guest today. This is obviously our first guest, and we're hopefully going to have guests about 75% of the time. This first guest recently finished a long day at a very high-paying, high-powered Wall Street job.
She's
It
already
is
annoyed.
my beautiful wife, Charlotte.
Welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you, Stephen.
Can you hear her? That was a thank you.
I heard.
Do you hear that a lot?
Thank
To
you.
me, thank you.
Well, I mean, how much do you actually do for Charlotte? I think she does a lot for you.
I do almost nothing, but just her presence gives me more gravitas.
That's why I meant. I thought that a lot. You're
He's
groveling
actually
at her
being-
feet.
He's actually being very modest. Steve does a lot. If
All
he
right.
died, I'd have to hire like a lot of people to do the things that he does.
So Tony and I have a series of questions we want to ask you. All
Are
more
we getting
each
right into the questions?
more erotic than the one before.
Wow.
Okay.
We're not going to ask you anything erotic. That's a joke.
Yeah, that is a joke.
I know you. I know.
How was your week? How's your day?
It was good. You look so serious. It was it was good. It was incredibly busy, but it was really good. Got a lot done.
Now, do you
Clear
want
out
to
the
tell? Do you want to tell a little bit about what's going on with you at work?
Well, I can't tell too much because it's confidential.
You
I'm
can
in the
tell
same
some
boat.
things, or no?
No, I can't.
Can you tell about how you're working more than one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
tell that.
So we have a sister community because I do senior living. I run senior living buildings. And so we have a sister community where the executive director will be leaving and moving back to her home state. And so for a period of time, I'm going to be running two buildings, an independent building and an assisted living building. So this week I've spent time at both and trying to learn as much as I can so that when that executive director leaves, I'll be solo with both buildings.
Wow.
And I'll come
Yeah, so
home
that's a
very
lot.
tired every night.
Yes,
Yeah, that's a lot.
it's a lot of work.
It is.
There's so much
Um,
inside to what you do as far as government regulation. People don't have any idea, how strict it is, how difficult
yeah.
it is, and how easily it is to lose I guess a license, or you just can, a whole community can shut down, right?
Right. So I worked really hard to get my administrator license. And there are so many regulations. And when you're the administrator, yours is the license that's put on the wall. And so you have to memorize every single regulation so that you can enforce it and make sure it's happening. Or else, you can get visited. Well, you will get visited by the state, no matter what, even if you're doing everything right. But if they were to find things that were wrong or that you didn't handle things right, you get deficiencies. And there are administrators who lose their license. Of course, they do really dumb things like take residents drinking. So I don't think I have to worry about that.
Right.
I'm pretty good. But I've spent the last year and a half in an independent living where I've not used any of those regulations. And so now spending time in a licensed community, like I'm having to exercise that and remember all of those things. And I forgot I actually really love regulations.
Well, I was just about to say,
I'm
but that's- you
weird.
love it, right?
I do.
Yes,
I do. Like I was sitting there yesterday and I'm like, wait a minute, does this person have 12 hours worth of dementia training within the first 3 months? Like, and I just, all these things were popping into my head. And I really do. I like it.
So I have to ask you, Charlotte, what do you think about the podcast so far?
You know what? I think I told Steve I felt like I'd been listening to this podcast for
Right.
many, many years.
So you used to, no, we didn't, there weren't many boys' night that boys' nights that you attended, but
No.
yes, but a lot of times it was the couples, Sarah
Right.
and myself and you. Yeah. So it was kind of like a mini boys' night because it's not like Steve and I stopped our behavior.
No, I have to tell you, those were some of the funnest, absolute funnest times.
They were.
You guys were like the best. Like
so much worse.
couple.
Tony's so much worse without Sarah.
Let's have her on. What are we thinking?
Yes, that's right. We could go, but I bet that would be super normal.
You know what? Let's dial her up right now.
You know, well, I'll be completely honest, Tony. Steve and I have talked about this many times, and it seems so selfish. But like when you guys went your separate ways, we felt like we really like we lost something. Like we mourned it.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. I mean, that was actually part of the mourning process for me as well. It's not like, it was hidden from us
Yeah.
or myself. You know what's interesting? I don't know if you guys know this, but Sarah and I seriously talked at one point to have you or Steve be our mediators. Did you
Mm.
know that?
No.
You didn't know that.
I don't
We
know how
know,
we
like-
would have done just being so close.
I know, but I think we trusted you guys the most, to really be fair.
Yeah.
So right
Anyways.
now, Charlotte, I do have a couple questions I thought of today. Did you see what I did with the patio?
No, I didn't notice it.
I finished 80 additional pavers.
Nice. Are they nice
No.
and flat and even?
I hope so.
Okay.
But I was wondering, not including myself,
Mhm.
although that may not have been the answer anyway. What is the best date you ever went on?
Not including
gosh.
yourself.
Yeah, not a Steve date.
Yes, let's
know,
get
like-
into her whole history of dating.
I don't know. I
Before
mean,
you.
we've been married for 24 years. And before that, we dated for 5 at a point. So I don't really
5
know.
years?
It's
You
weird.
guys were together 5 years before you got married?
We have been
About
no,
4.5, 5.
we have been together there was a window, a fairly lengthy window where we were not together, but we have been together for 31 years.
You know what? I said that backwards. I just thought of that. I said that backwards. We
I
were
wasn't gonna
together
say
for a
anything.
couple of years, and then we were apart for like 4.5, 5
But
years.
during that 4.5 years, you dated hundreds of guys. And I'm just wondering, were there any dates that were particularly memorable? I'm not being jealous. I'm just wondering if any of them were.
You know what? I had fun dates, but yeah, none that stick out to me. None that
Okay,
stick out to me
good.
as being more fun.
So what's your
What was-
funnest date though with Steve? That's really
My funnest date with Steve,
yes.
That would have been last Saturday,
going
right?
to
At the
Florida.
conference?
No, Florida. This last vacation to
Florida, yes.
was like amazing. You should have seen it, Tony.
Did you see
Florida,
mine?
Charlotte, and Steve were like crazy happy.
Oh,
Florida,
wow.
Charlotte, and Steve were very handsy and flirty.
Mm.
Yeah, it was nice.
Off limits. At
We
some
were in
point,
a double bed.
Steve,
We
I forgot.
normally sleep in a king size bed. We were in a double bed, and we felt like we had plenty of room.
Wow, that's close.
It was really, and there are moments where I say to her, "Where is Florida, Charlotte?"
Yeah. So
You're on vacation.
this is, I don't know if you can see it, but that
Nope,
is Steve and Charlotte.
not
in
at
Florida.
all.
Nope.
It's all
No,
fuzzy.
it's pretty
It was
awesome.
a good attempt.
What?
It was a good attempt.
It was a good. All right, fine.
I know this is off topic. We can just quickly. I just
Mhm.
want to put this out there that at some point I would love it, Steve. I would love it if we go over the story of how your in-laws met and dated and courted each other. You know the story I'm talking about.
I do.
My parents?
Yes.
Yes, your parents.
It's a story
It's a story. It's a story
of a different time.
of a different time. Exactly. I love it. It's one of my favorite
would-
stories that stuck
It
with
would
me.
not happen today.
My
it will
dad
not
is
happen today.
my dad is such a good storyteller that when
should
he
have him
tells
on.
it, when he tells any story about, it's hilarious.
Maybe that's what we'll do. Is we'll have Gary.
I don't
on
think
at some
Steve could
point.
tell it the same.
No, I can't. I
No
don't-
offense.
Oh no! It's not my story.
Well, the problem is when Gary tells it, Steve and I are just laughing with glee as like little school children at his story,
true.
because we're just like, this is so ridiculous. And then he gets upset or like tripped up a little bit.
Well, I do know that one time I went on Reddit and it was somebody was talking about their parents' inappropriate courtship. And I did talk about my in-laws, and we should probably just say the biggest issue was just the age difference.
Yes, there's an age difference,
And that
but
Charlotte's
at a
mom
young
was
age.
something like 12,
No, she was 16.
Oh,
and my dad was
16.
23.
23. And 7 years isn't that big a deal, but at that stage, it's a big
At
deal.
that
And
stage.
today it would be a huge deal.
Right.
And they dated until my mom turned 18, off and on. And then they got
Legal
married
age.
when she was 18. Yeah.
Yeah.
Legal.
Now she
Well-
has two sisters though that both got married when they were like 14.
Yes.
No
Wow.
joke. Different era.
Way
It's just a
different.
different time. People could,
Yeah.
although now apparently in good Tennessee,
You could still
they're
marry your
working on
cousin
that.
back then. Steve, do we have any corrections from last week?
Um,
I think more importantly, has there been any backlash?
Nobody ever talks to me about the podcast, Tony. Well, my son told me the first part of our podcast was boring because it was about politics,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
which might be fair. We were just kind of talking through that, but he said the rest of it kept him entertained. And that's a quote, entertained.
So
That's
I talked
the
about
key.
your guys' podcast today at lunch with some of my friends, and Heather, who Steve and Heather have a fun
Oh, yes.
acquaintanceship there. But I told her that you guys had a podcast, and she wanted the link because she thinks it would be hilarious.
Well, it would be. So here's the deal with Heather. Okay. So there was this guy at Charlotte's building, this really old, weird guy, super racist, anti-Semitic.
Don't tell too
And-
much.
Well, the point is he called somebody the F word. Okay.
Fun.
And
Ferret?
Blanker. And so Heather was
Fudge?
saying, because then he said, like, oh, it's no big deal. It's it's no different than any other word. And so then Heather on her own said to Charlotte, she goes, if it's no different, how would he feel if I saw him and said, hey, effer? Which I thought was very funny. So the next time Charlotte was on the phone with her, I took the phone and I said, hey, effer. And now that is our thing.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
What's our thing, Steve?
What's our thing?
We don't have a thing.
Seething contempt.
That's usually so. What we kind of brushed on this. It was a joke, like, one of those Hollywood inside stories, like, what if we ever get to a point in our relationship where we're contentious, we hate each other, and then all of a sudden we get on the podcast, we're like, hey everybody, welcome to the podcast, and we just bury it down deep for an hour, and then we'll go right back to it. And then you question, what was your question? If there's anything that I could do to make you mad.
Oh, yes. No, I did. I today I was thinking about that. And because you and I mean, when somebody does say something wrong, we always kind of like go with it and turn it into a joke.
Oh,
And I
right.
was wondering, I was like, is there actually something that Tony could do that would make me really mad at him?
So Charlotte was part of this. That's why I bring it up, because
What?
oh, you were there. Whatever restaurant we were at in Huntington, it
Okay.
was just the three of us. It was that really awkward kind of, I don't know if it was the first time the three of us had gone out. It was that awkward first, like third wheel post-divorce kind of lunch,
Yes.
post-separation, probably. Actually, I don't think the divorce was final yet. And you screamed at me and yelled at me in the restaurant.
I did? No.
No, no,
I wish
no.
I remembered
Steve did.
that.
Oh.
Oh, I did?
Like that doesn't sound
Yes.
like me.
No, Charlotte, you'd never.
What did you do?
You were really mad at me for contemplating a divorce, and
Oh, probably. Sure.
oh, you were so mad.
Well,
You're making a mistake. You yelled.
I mean, obviously people have to do what they have to do for themselves.
Well, part of it was, I think you were upset because I was making a decision during a crisis.
Oh, that was a I don't want to say that was a mistake, but at the time, especially, I thought this is
on paper, it looked horrible, right?
terrible timing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's the only time.
Well, but even then, I mean, I wasn't like I didn't hate you or anything. We just I was sad.
No, I mean, if there was hate behind it, I would have felt it, and we would have probably never been friends again.
Right.
Well,
And then what's that?
I was gonna say, so Steve and I sometimes we would like somehow end up fighting
gosh,
during
yeah.
Sarah's fights.
Yeah, we would vicariously, yeah.
We would.
Oh,
we
I've
would.
begged. I've begged people to not take sides, especially with.
Well, it wasn't taking sides. It was just
but you know.
Well, except Charlotte would take Sarah's point of view and I would take Tony's point of view. So it kind of was taking sides.
I mean,
a house divided is, you know.
Yeah. So like
yeah.
we had like a thing where we weren't allowed to talk about you guys for a while.
It's funny because I talked to John Aaron Connect about that, and he said, "Oh, that's so weird because Christine and I had a couple go through a divorce. We're friends of ours, and we were doing the same thing. I think it's sort of natural."
It is. So sorry to go on this tangent, but I was thinking today or the other day, probably today actually. You had told me, like, Tony, your divorce is going to be extremely polarizing within the ward, and I completely did not believe you. I did not believe
it was.
Oh man, and to go down that road, and I started thinking of all the things that you forewarned and how spot on you were.
Yes.
There's so many things that you've taught me through the years that have
I'm
stuck with me.
Wise mentor.
You're very wise. You know, I am the Padawan, you are the master. Yep.
Okay.
That's why you're aging so horribly compared to me. You know. So yeah, it was interesting to start kind of. I don't know why I was thinking about these things today, but it was. So the time to finish this circle, the time that you got me the most upset.
I want to hear this.
It was even that upset because I don't get that upset. But I was reading something, and instead of saying epitome, I said epitome. And you
I
and
probably
Brett
mocked you for that.
Oh, you and Brett just skewered me. And you know.
Wait, how old was Brett?
Oh, he was like 4 at the time.
No, he was 14 or 15, something like that. And you guys just, I mean, you're like practically rolling on the ground laughing.
With good reason. That sounds very
Every
embarrassing.
time I see that word, I say epitome. It does not matter. I want it to me. I never say epitome.
You know, just that reminds me, I tried to do a solo podcast just this week.
Complete failure.
And it was a complete failure. And it was, you know, I wanted to review books I like. And I just could not, I had no one to play off of.
Boring.
And then I
That's
thought
the nerdiest thing that anyone has ever done is let's start a podcast and do book reviews.
I think that, well, the problem, Tony, is that you've not read a book. And so you're not familiar with the process of reviewing them and listening to those kind of.
As I've made Facebook posts, your comment on my Facebook post is how I'm illiterate.
I just said you struggle with words.
Obviously, I just told you the example that I struggle with.
Yes, that even to this moment, that is so embarrassing for you.
That is funny.
Charlotte, have you ever like just contemplated just leaving this man?
Yes, she absolutely, like this morning. She was under the covers.
What has caused you to stay?
She was under the covers, and I saw a bit of leg, and I said, "Hey, I saw some leg. Can I come over and snuggle with you?" And she started laughing at me and said, "That's it. I'm gone."
That's it. I'm gone. You know, whenever I see mismatched couples like your own, I think of three things. There's only a couple of reasons why a woman would stay, you know. My first thought is he must have an enormous member, right? He's either or rich, you know, or just incredibly handsome, or maybe a combination of all three, right? I don't know what it is with Steve.
You know
Charlotte's
what it
only
is with Steve?
Yes.
He treats me like a princess
He does.
at all times. Yeah.
Yes, he does. He
Actually,
adores you.
And that led me, Charlotte, to another question I wanted to ask you.
What's
This is, which is what has been the best surprise about being married and the biggest disappointment about being married? Like,
Wow.
no, I mean, it doesn't have to be terrible about me or anything like that, but the thing that's happy surprise and negative surprise.
just to be married in general?
Yeah.
Happy surprise is how well we play off of each other.
Yes.
Like that actually just came up yesterday because I was thinking of an opportunity I had career-wise and I decided, no, I don't want to pursue that because, I just don't have that ambition right now. Like, I don't want to do that. And at the same time, Steve is having that ambition and he's taking on new things that are related to his work.
Finally.
And we talked about how that's happened our entire marriage. Like if one of us, we just naturally take turns doing things.
Really?
Yeah. Like when I was a
The whole
stay-at-home
time.
mom, he worked like crazy.
Yeah.
When I went back into the workforce, he was like, it's your turn.
See, that's
And
when I
so
first met
then
you guys.
I did that and he took a step back and we never talk about it. It just naturally happens.
Charlotte,
Actually, also happens with our depression.
It
One of
does-
us will be
no, he's not
depressed, the other
joking.
one's feeling better. It's really, really great.
that's
If one
really
of us
great.
is struggling with, seriously though, if one of us is like
So-
going through a time where we're struggling, the other one is always in like a really good place to like help. And then like if he's done being, stressed about something or depressed about something, then that like allows me to do it. So
So you guys are even Steven.
yeah, I think our differences actually make that whole thing work. So that's probably like a really good thing, is just how well it works together. The hardest thing about being married, we don't travel as much as I thought we would. Yeah. We
I
had
think you
kids
guys
and
enjoyed that,
jobs
though.
and all that. Do what?
I didn't think you guys really enjoyed that though.
We would like short trips.
Yeah, we don't like long trips, but like a week somewhere is great. But we just take on too much with work and kids, and they're expensive, children. So
We keep waiting for the children to die and the dogs to. No, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. The dogs to die and the children to move out.
That's called a
And
Freudian slip, right?
Then we'll have the life we've always dreamed of.
Charlotte, you were one of the people in my life that, I mean, I was so glad that I got to kind of be there and see. You went from a stay-at-home mom.
Mhm.
You had a degree, right? You had gone to college,
Mhm.
but it was years since you had done anything, right?
Oh yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom for like 12 years.
Yeah, 12 years. And then I'll never forget your first job. I won't forget it. It was so challenging. It was very low pay.
Oh yeah.
But the demands were so high because of the resident.
No, seriously. I got paid less than $10 an hour and I had to do the marketing for the building. I had to do all the leases, the tours, the cleaning. Like I literally had to mop all the floors and the bathrooms. And so like I'd have a meeting with the mayor and then I would come back to the building and I would clean the toilets. So yeah.
You did so much for that.
But I
building and that
learned
company.
so much from that job, and like stuff that even comes up now.
Mhm.
Like I'll have a situation at work and I'm like, oh, I know how to get parking spaces set up for a building, or I know how to, number the apartments for the post office, like things that I would never have known if I hadn't done that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to know, because going out and getting a career,
Man, there's a fly.
especially one that requires a little ambition, that kind of breaks away from the norm of what we think about from a Mormon wife who's a member of the church. Have you what kind of interaction have you had with the other women at church? Like, do they never mention it? Do they envy you? Do you ever get negative comments?
I'll be honest, like when we were in the Huntington ward, it wasn't really a thing either way. Like I think people like, yeah, it just didn't really stand out as being different.
Because it was
I know
really
that sounds weird, but it didn't. Like no one treated me differently. No one like felt like I should have stayed at home longer or anything, you know. I think they were because I didn't change jobs a lot, but I would get a better opportunity and leave. Like I never just was like, I quit. So I did move a bit. And I think people that seemed odd that like I was moving jobs, but each one was so significantly better than the one before. And so when I started going out of town more for work, when I worked in Upland, I think that was a little odd because it made it so much harder to get to, you know, get to all the activities at church and everything. But no, everybody was pretty cool with it. And it's interesting because so many of my friends, like we were all stay-at-home moms at the same time. And I was like one of the first ones to go get a career, but a lot of the other sisters I hung out with have all done that. I mean, Sarah is now a DON, you know, Angie has a really cool job that she's a supervisor. Like everybody, like I think everyone just, we hit an age where kids were old enough that we all went out and did things. It was like
Right.
our time.
That's right.
Now, I think I actually got, because you weren't just working, you also had these leadership callings. And I wondered if I got seen as more as a
Trophy husband.
well, not somebody who could be a leader. That when Charlotte got called to be Relief Society president, I had several people tell me how they knew I was going to be which I wanted to be supportive, and I was going to be supportive. I didn't, but when they told me that they knew I would be supportive, it felt like they were saying like, you know, you don't have any testicles, Steve, so we don't have to worry about you doing it straying. You know, you'll stay home and man the,
the guys
kitchen
look
again.
at Steve and their first thought is beta male.
Beta
male. That's right.
Charlotte, would you consider yourself an alpha female?
No.
You're too nice.
Yeah, no. I'll tell you,
but you're strong.
I've worked with women like that. I have. And they don't tend to help other women. Like they have like a sense of almost jealousy of like someone else is gonna. In fact, I had an ED that did, an executive director who did that with me when I was the marketer. She just hated me and I could never figure out why. Like I tried so hard to get her to like me. And it finally came out one day that she thought I was after her job. And I really wasn't. But there are some people who have that kind of view. But for all the women I work with now, we all talk about how much fun it is to find other women or men, doesn't matter. But find people that haven't had an opportunity because someone has to give you your break, you know?
Right.
And we find them and invest in them. So I had lunch with one today that me and Heather, the one that Steve loves to say things with. We were at lunch with her and she started out in activities. She told us she wanted to be a marketer. And so we just decided, okay, we're going to make it happen for her. And that's like so rewarding. Like that is and that's how all the women that are kind of at my level feel like we have to do that for like the next generation.
I do think it's an age thing. Do you think that older women are more?
I was going to say that what I have noticed more than anything, I feel like women are able to like circle the wagons around each other way better than men do. Men kind of seem like this solo, creature. They're out there on their own. And it's like, oh, if you need some help, oh, well, there's so much competition among men, but then women seem to band together so much better.
And I do see that it's funny because in different places I've been, you see different things, but where I'm at now in the Indianapolis area, like if one of the women that we work with, not even in our building, like competition, but someone that we collaborate with or have competition with who loses their job or has a really hard time, like all the rest of us start looking for them opportunities and
That is
like to
really
get
cool.
them hired somewhere,
Yeah.
even though like we actually like not we don't fight for, but we compete for like the same leads and the same things. No, it's awesome. Yeah.
It is awesome.
Yeah. And
Uh,
it kind of makes me feel like that executive director that was just so hateful, like that was just her. It's not really how women are, but I think that's how it's more portrayed, like in movies and media.
Wait, are you saying that Hollywood isn't true?
Right.
is this?
Right.
All right. Yeah, Steve is like one of the first guy friends that I've ever had that has been really supportive, more than supportive, but just like genuine happiness whenever I had a success. Steve,
Mhm.
you're the absolute first for me.
Well, I remember being in elders quorum once and talking about that we were supposed to look at each other and be rooting for each other. And
Yeah.
then when one person had a success, it was a success for all of us. And there were times when I felt that with the guys at church, but that's why the boys night, the boys club that we talk about has been such a big deal for us.
Yes.
Because this is a group where we really did kind of magnify that idea.
Yes. Do you remember I started what we called manrichment?
I do remember that.
That actually sounds
Yes.
familiar.
Yes, I do
Well, it
remember that.
upset so many sisters in the ward.
It
'Cause
did?
It was
Oh,
it was a
really?
play on enrichment. Remember,
Yeah,
women had enrichment night, and then I started manrichment, and it was Shirley.
that just sounds like choosing to be upset about something.
Well, the whole idea was to try to get us to bond more. It was also to be able to have one person show off a skill, because that's really what it was. If you never had a dad or a mom or whoever in your life who said, okay, come, this is how you check the oil, this is how you change the oil,
Mhm.
right? That's a really simplified, but we actually had people who were like really good woodworkers. One thing for me was I never knew, I was never a hunter. My family really didn't hunt, but I always kind of had a mild interest in it. So we had someone on who taught us all about hunting and all that. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But it failed miserably. It didn't last. It didn't keep going.
Well, it's hard to, and even the church recognized that. When I was a little boy, Tony, this probably predates you a little bit. Charlotte will remember the road shows.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, road shows were like all the wards from the state
Yeah.
would get together and they'd put on these little mini plays, and they were such a big
very
deal.
Mormon. That's very
They were a
Mormon.
lot of fun.
Yes. But the church has done away with those, and all the other really almost everything except for mutual and seminary is pretty much gone now.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I was just thinking about the weekend. Charlotte, I don't know if you know, I went to a singles conference, a little singles event, and it had a theme, right? And like, I've never understood why people get so excited about a theme, like a dance theme, and it was like the Roaring 20s or something like that. So everyone dressed
That sounds
up.
like a lot of fun.
See what I'm saying? Like
I want to go buy a dress for the Roaring 20s. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was one of the few people that did not dress up at all. So
I would not have dressed up.
Well, I just don't understand it. Like, you're going to go out and you're going to spend $50 to $75, sometimes twice that, on an outfit that you're never going to wear again. It just doesn't seem.
You recycle it for Halloween the next year.
Well, I guess. I mean, you have to be really good at keeping it in a box somewhere and then remembering it and then also being able to fit in it still, like eventually a few years down. It
Mhm.
just seems weird. But people get so like in our culture, someone, I always like feel like I'm making fun of those Mormons when I'm one myself, but I didn't grow up in the culture and I don't understand a lot of it. And that really explains a lot. I'm glad that came up.
Tony,
Okay.
I did.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go
Go
ahead,
on,
Charlotte,
Steve.
please. No, you've gone.
Well, I was just going to say, because we were talking about, you talked about enrichment and road shows and all these different things, and we were talking about jobs. I always say, I feel like one thing the church has done for people is give chances to learn so many different things and to like be leaders and teachers. So I honestly, every job I've gotten is because of the things I learned from working in activity days and Cub Scouts and Young Women
sure.
and Relief
Oh,
Society.
absolutely.
Like and Steve knows this, I used to like have such a horrible anxiety that if I was asked to say prayer, especially like closing prayer,
See, I can't even imagine that from you.
I would sit the entire hour hoping that something would happen and my leg would just magically break so that I would get to leave and no one would think bad of me for not getting up and saying prayer.
Charlotte, I literally cannot even imagine you
Yeah.
doing it.
It was not unheard of early in our marriage for Charlotte to be asked to give the prayer and for
So-
me to end up giving the prayer.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's
It was that bad.
great.
But like
So Charlotte, you never served a mission, right?
no,
Okay.
no. So every calling I had though, like put me outside my comfort zone and taught me something.
So those are really,
So,
I'm sorry, hon. I thought you were done. My apologies.
well, I was just going to say, so that's the reason why I think so many, because there are a lot of women in the church, if you notice, when their kids get older, they go back into the workplace and they're usually very successful. And I think it's because you taught primary.
Oh, sure.
You did all those things. And I think that's probably true for the men too.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah.
Okay, so I do have a question then, because those are very positive things about church, and I agree with everything
Let's
you've
go
said.
negative now.
Well, we've had an interesting situation in our family, which Charlotte, I told her I was going to ask her about this. And that is with our son coming out as gay.
Mhm.
And where do you feel, how do you feel the church is doing as far as working with gay teens?
Okay, so my whole thought on this is when we first found out, because Camden just very casually mentioned it to us one day. We were
It was
like,
shocking, yes.
Steve's response was, "That's new, huh?" And at first wasn't really concerned about that part, like him being gay, but just what that meant, how people would treat him. Like that
Yes.
was a worry because anyone who's met Camden knows he is like this biggest sweetheart, just the sweetest little thing ever. He follows every rule. He does everything right. Like he's just so sweet and so easily to be taken. We were worried advantage of. But what we've discovered is since he came out, he is so confident. He is so happy. He started caring about his health more. So like at this point, I can't imagine him not being. Like, I'd be like, if he came out and said I'm not, I'd be like, are you sure? Maybe we should try that again. Just because it's his identity now and it's who he is. So we had an interesting thing that we went, Steve and I had an interview with the bishop. I think it was Tithing Settlement or Temple Recommend, I don't know. And he asked like if it'd be okay if like young men's leaders came and talked to him or he came and talked to him. And my response was no. Like leave Camden completely 100% alone, because I did not want anyone to even hint at the idea that what he made him so happy and what God gave him was in any way wrong. And so I was very stern on that like, no,
good for you, Charlotte.
We're not
good
doing
for
it.
You.
And so Camden, like he went back to Huntington to visit some friends and he went to church because like he wanted to see everybody. So, but I just don't want anyone reaching out to him because I don't want him to ever get that idea. And I think the fact that I even feel that means the church hasn't done a great job at welcoming that our LGBTQ
We don't talk
plus
about it.
community.
We
No.
just don't talk about it.
Mm-mm. But I will say our ward is really cool though, because
Yeah, the word
they're
we live in now.
actually like, we live in this weird ward that's like really open and laid back and diverse, and people are open about things going on in their lives and about things like that, because it actually is more prevalent than what people realize. And so we're blessed in that way. Yeah, we're really blessed. But yeah, church, my goal for Camden is that he is, well, okay, he has Dylan's his boyfriend, so, and Dylan is great, but he's, he's 18.
So Camden's
16.
dating somebody.
Oh yeah, he
Well-
has been for how long have
Wow.
they been dating now? Maybe a year.
A year, yeah.
Really?
The thing
Yeah.
the
You
thing
never
is
told
that
me.
I know he's going to watch this, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm not
that's
negative on
fine.
Dylan at all. I really like Dylan, but Camden is so young
And dynamic.
and dynamic and outgoing.
How old is he now?
and-
He's 16.
16.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I don't know. Like,
So,
I kind of had this little fantasy of him at some point meeting a little Mormon boy whose parents had rejected him, and then he'd come in and we could
Why
be
would you
his
want a kid to be
surrogate mom and
rejected?
dad.
Well,
No, I want him to, yeah. Camden though, he's like, Tony, you wouldn't believe his confidence level is just off the chart.
you know what? I saw him once, and that was when I came down to fix your car, Steve, right?
Yeah.
And I did notice. I felt like I noticed. And I think that was very close to when he had just came out, or
Yeah, probably.
right around that. Yeah.
Probably.
And yeah, you
Yeah,
could see the
yeah.
difference for sure.
my
Although
gosh.
I hadn't seen him for years, I always thought Camden was a very confident kid.
But he was outgoing,
Yeah, outgoing,
Yeah, he's
funny.
an
especially compared to
extrovert.
the rest of us.
He's
Oh,
an
yeah,
extrovert
yeah.
in a family of introverts.
Yeah, poor guy.
Sure.
Yeah. But no,
Um,
it's different level. And he's lost. How much weight has he lost, Steve?
90 pounds.
Yeah.
What?
And he wasn't big, but he's
Yeah, he
also
wasn't
very
big.
tall. He's over 6 feet tall. I mean, he's a tall kid now.
Holy
but-
cow!
He's like a
I
little
think-
beanpole. He wears
He
like
weighs-
size 28.
Yeah, he's 130 pounds and he's
Wow.
muscular. He lifts all the time. And
I don't know if you
Um,
can tell, we kind of love our son.
Yeah,
We also have
absolutely.
Well,
another
I
son and
guess-
a daughter who are equally as cute and amazing. So
well, but we haven't
Say
been talking
that.
about Camden, but I do think like sometimes when I'm online with other members and they talk about how having a gay child is it's a trial for a parent, and I
Yeah,
go,
it's a-
you
yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. It's
yeah,
not a
so
trial.
it's not a trial.
There's
It's not a
nothing
trial
wrong with
for me at
him. He
all.
doesn't need to be fixed. This isn't going to be cured in the resurrection. This is who he is.
Right. That's all very tough. Like, without mentioning the ward, because I feel like sometimes I need to censor a few things. I mean, we were in a ward, whatever, I already gave it away. Where remember when the Boy Scouts allowed gay leaders to be in the Scouts? Remember that
Yeah.
big change? And remember
And kids.
yes, and kids, and the backlash from, I mean, literally from the pulpit.
Really? I
Remember?
didn't remember that.
Oh, Steve,
was
you remember,
bad.
and you remember who, right?
At the time, though, I mean, I didn't think I had a gay kid, so it wasn't that I didn't care. I was just like, oh well,
We
I felt like
cared,
at
Steve.
some
No,
point
no,
things
no.
would get better.
Steve,
No,
you
you're
would not have been okay with it. 'cause
no, you're
always-
underplaying it, Steve. We cared.
Mm.
We
Oh,
absolutely
no,
cared.
no, okay. I cared. I wasn't okay with it, but I'm saying like I don't want to pretend I had the same passion.
Sure. No, I get it.
But no,
get-
I definitely cared, and I oftentimes would walk away from announcements from
Yeah.
leaders, not really from the local leaders, but from other, letters we'd get or whatever, and I would be super irritated with.
Well, this is where I first learned about projection, right? Was, Steve, the therapist, taught me about projection, that here's these white, well, it doesn't matter if they're white, but these males that get up and they would be so angry and so upset about gay this or gay that. And then Steve's like, yeah, they're closet gays themselves. They're just projecting.
Well, we had at least 2 men in that ward who are absolutely homosexuals. They happen to be married to
Steven.
women. No, you know who they are.
No, I don't.
I've told you who they are a bunch of times.
Well, I had forgotten then. No, but that
Well-
actually is a thing, Tony, because Camden, we were talking about someone, a young kid who was a teenage boy who was, saying racial things and saying homophobic things. And Camden's reaction when he heard that is he goes, oh, he's like, I feel bad for him. He's like, I went through that. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, when I was trying to figure out like why I felt the way I did, he's like, I really dived into like homophobic things and just things that were like complete, like trying to, I guess, to convince himself to like that wasn't okay. And he said he was really angry. And I always felt so terrible. I'm like, what? Why didn't you tell us? Like we would have been. And he's like, some things you got to do for yourself, Mom. I was like, okay.
That's right.
But he, yeah, I mean, it really, that just surprised me because like you think that's just something Steve teases about, but it's true.
No, I really wish that more people understood projection. Sometimes I actually worry that, what am I projecting? Because we all do it, right? At some point, we're all do it. I don't think we're ever perfect at it. And I'm
Right.
like, man, what? Because I can see it so clearly now. But then now I'm like worried, what am I doing? How am I projecting onto other people? I do it. I know I do
So
it.
Steve teases me, Tony, that I project onto the kids because if I'm cold, I assume they're all cold. Or if I'm
Yes.
hungry, they're all hungry. If I want chocolate, they must all want chocolate.
That's
If I'm
more
not
of a
feeling
motherly
well, they must
instinct,
also
though.
not be feeling well.
You're just thinking about others. That's so, Charlotte. Okay, that really begs a question at this point. How has it really been being married to a therapist, someone in the mental health field?
You know what? I've learned so much.
You
Like-
learn a lot, but does he say you're doing this and it's some psychological term? And
No, I would say we do that equally to each other.
well, now that you're, practically a pro yourself, right?
But no,
But in the
he
beginning-
doesn't really do the therapy thing at home.
Besides your dreams.
Right. That is still his favorite party trick, by the way.
No, she's talking about when people tell me their first memories.
Yeah, but you know what he's talking about, though.
I do know what he's talking about. But
Okay.
I was bridging that communication between
Okay,
each-
okay.
Yes. Steve, by the way, I have these questions that I try to, when I meet somebody for the first time, I have these list of questions that I go through to try to kind of of course it's a filter, but it's also try to figure someone out as quickly as I can. And you taught me that one, I always ask what's their earliest memory.
Oh, really?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. It's one of
Okay,
my,
that's interesting.
I ask a few different questions, but I can't reveal them all here on the podcast.
No, that's
Oh.
your proprietary information.
It is.
I will say something Steve has said is I have learned after a long time that is 100% true is that believe people when they show you who they are. Because I'm one of those
Yes.
people that I'm always like, oh, they're having a bad day, and I always try to like have way too much empathy. And he's like, that's dead on. Like I've
Okay,
learned.
so this is getting obnoxious. Charlotte,
What
I feel
is?
like you need to say the 5 worst. Okay, so here we go. The 5 worst things about being married to Steve. Go.
Do you really want me to?
No. Lord, no. No, but
Steve, you had a good question earlier, though. Do you want to go down that road?
what was the question? Oh, yes. Okay. So I think that the answer for you and me is the same, Charlotte,
Okay.
but I mean, it could be wrong. What is the darkest place you've ever had to come back from? Or the hardest trial? I mean, like that, the toughest situation you've had to come back from.
Honestly,
Yes.
No, we want to be liked.
well,
Make it
honestly,
salacious.
it's when I had someone I was close to or thought I was
Oh,
close
I know.
to.
Okay, with our answer is not the same.
Yeah, and that person really, really hurt me, hurt
Yeah.
my kid, hurt me with words.
we're not gonna mention
anything-
his
not
names,
anything
are we?
else. And
You can't.
it was
Mm.
just it was just so mean that it sent me into a deep depression. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I didn't even realize how bad it was until I was telling Steve about a dream because he interprets dreams. And I was telling him, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea it was that dark."
Well,
And
so
that
one
was a
thing
bad
about
time.
one thing about Charlotte that you have to appreciate is that she, and this is how nice people are. Nice people believe that other people are also nice. That's why you and I don't have this problem, Tony. So somebody like Charlotte, who is kind, and she believes that other people are kind. So when she puts trust into someone and then they're abusive, which is what it really is,
Right.
it's very hard for her. Charlotte, what I thought you were going to, my darkest point was when I was working in Fort Wayne at that juvenile prison. And
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
well,
That
it
was
was
bad.
it was really more about the supervisor that I had, and she was very, very emotionally and verbally violent toward me. And and I do want to go ahead and mention this, that because I think it's something I don't want to act like I am ashamed of. I have a lot of fun mental health issues. And so I have to take medications every day. It's all really well regulated, but at the time I was not well medicated. And so I started having this thing at night where I would be convinced that someone was breaking into the house.
Wow.
You remember that, Charlotte?
Yeah, I do. It was
Um,
just anxiety off the charts.
And so I would be convinced that somebody was breaking into the house. So I would walk around the house with a butterfly knife and a phone.
Butterfly knife.
Well, I didn't have a gun, thank God. And I just was convinced. Now, during the day, I would say to myself, what the hell is wrong with you? Why am I having these thoughts? This is bizarre. That's not true, and,
Right.
but then as it got dark, something clicked in me. And hey, Charlie May, you might want to recenter your camera a little bit.
Oh, I started slouching.
I mean, it's fine, but
I like
anyway.
the progression.
But no, so like I
It
said,
was
I
showing
started
her
having
interest level in the podcast.
It's really getting into what was being said.
No, but I like I said, so I started having these really hardcore delusions that
Mhm.
so we obviously, I'm a therapist, but we're a very pro mental health family.
Yes.
But that for me was the dark place I had to come back from. And again, I know that it was unsettling for poor Charlotte. Maybe terrifying. Maybe she felt like she had to take the kids and hide. I mean, she never really did that, but in my mind, looking back, I would think to myself that if she had been smart, she would have taken the kids and got the heck out of there. But
right. So
what about you, Tony?
Well, I want to add a little bit of background with Steve's comment, because I think it's significant. So Steve, where did you grow up? I mean, you kind of moved around a lot, right?
Yeah, we moved around a lot. Yes.
Your dad was in higher education, right?
For most of the time, yes.
Yes. So what I want to mention is to really get people into the mindset of where you're at and what happens. And it's not just you. There was another mental health professional that I know that this happened to, grew up in the church. I don't think your dad sheltered you a lot from just the little I know about him. But with this particular person, they were sheltered a lot. And then they said, you know what do I want to study? What profession do I want to go into? And mental health was the choice. And here, if you had not experienced a lot of trauma, if you were kind of sheltered a little bit in the, the quote unquote Mormon bubble, and all of a sudden you have to be across from somebody who is explaining how difficult it is. Oh, I was going to say it because it was the story you told me. I just can't say it. Like doing certain things, really terrible things, and
Sure.
you have to work. You're in a prison system where they
Yes.
did terrible things, and they had to explain to you why they enjoyed it so much.
That did happen.
And here you're kind of this naive, right? A little bit more
early on, sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I cannot imagine the shock and trauma that would be to go from essentially a Mormon bubble to a prison and learn all these different stories from all these inmates and the things they've done.
And Tony, do you remember what happened to Steve his very first day that he went into the prison to work as a
I do not.
therapist?
I do not.
Tell him, Steve.
Well, so I thought it was, I mean, it's my first day after grad school, first job post grad school. And, what do you do on a first day, right? You fill out paperwork, you read
Sure, HR
manuals, it's
stuff.
boring.
Mhm.
So about 9:30, I got there at 9. At about 9:30, my supervisor runs in and goes, "Steve, there's been a suicide at the jail."
Oh,
And
no.
that obviously not only occupied that day, but that occupied a lot of the next several weeks because there was so much fallout from that.
Man.
People worried they're going to get sued, and people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of it was invented, but a lot of trauma from the inmates who they're trapped in there. And so the idea of somebody killing themselves, is very unsettling. And, this was a jail. It wasn't a prison. This for the first year of my career. And so these weren't hardened guys. They were guys who did stupid stuff for the most part.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that did happen. Yes.
Yeah,
So I'm the one who made Steve a therapist.
you are.
I am.
Well, you should
what's
tell the
funny?
story then. You can't say that.
Okay. So we were engaged. We weren't married yet, I don't think, or maybe we
That
were
is
newlyweds. I don't know. But we were taking a walk one evening. He was telling me about school because he did like accounting and business and all those kinds of things because he's really good at numbers. He's smart. And I was asking him about it, and he's like, "I hate it." And I was like, "Then why are you doing it?" "Well, because I'm good at it and I don't know what else to do." And I told him, I said, "You're so good at listening," because he was just a great listener. "You're so great at listening. You're so great at like talking through things, that you should be a therapist. You should do psychology." And he's like, "I did have one psychology class I really liked." So then he just
Wow,
did
I
it.
didn't know that.
It was as good as, honestly, I developed a passion for it over time, but frankly, at that point, it was as good as anything else. What are we doing on time?
Oh, you know what? We're at about, we're not quite an hour yet. We're probably 45
Okay.
minutes.
Because I did want to, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say that, and this is not, I hate to follow up with this because I think it's great what Charlie did for you. I think you're amazing at it. But what I do remember is like a Steveism, right? Where someone who was in a different field, and therapy doesn't pay very well, right? Unless have your own practice, right? It pays well, but these people were making probably 3 times as much as you, and you're like,
Sure.
They are such an idiot. Like, I'm smarter than them. I could be making what they're making.
Yeah. But are
How many
they
times
the
you
idiot
said
if
what?
they're making 3 times as much as I am?
And you know how many times you'd say that?
You know what though? Steve's job is so perfect. He literally drives around with his dog all day.
I
and
know.
Visits
No,
kids and
like-
takes them out of bad situations and plays.
Like I
and,
said,
yeah.
I really did not want to follow up, that wonderful story with what I said, but I just always thought it was funny. Steve
Well,
is
the truth
very
is that,
intelligent.
I do make more as my career has progressed. I make more, and I have
Let's
a sweet
actually
sugar
talk
mama
exactly.
who takes very good care of me.
Okay. So what was your question? Where are we moving on to?
I do not remember.
You asked how we're doing on time, and you wanted to bring something up.
I did. I wanted to bring something important and interesting. I have no idea. I have no idea what I
All
was
right.
going to
So I do have a story that I decided to tell from the weekend, because that, we were talking about, what do we want to correct from last podcast? Well, there's just stories that I wanted to add, that maybe I didn't really feel comfortable with talking at first, but this has nothing to do with, it's not connected to anything. I don't know where it's going to go. What?
You're fine. Just go ahead.
So I decided, as a funny joke, to take these surgery prep markers to the event. Okay. So, the doctors use them. They'll like mark your leg, like which one to amputate, like,
Right.
and they are like prep resistant surgery markers, which means they don't come off easily. right? And I was just going to have fun marking people and doing things, fun. To me,
That
that
is
was
fun.
Right. Do you know how many sad sacks I ran into? They like, I was surprised. Like some people I was writing tattoos, like, okay, tell me what tattoo you want. And then I'd put a little tattoo on them, and I'd put TB, and put my little initials on there. It was just so much fun. And there's people that just looked at me like, and then one person, she might listen to it. She might not. I don't care. I was just so surprised. She's like, well, I taught my children to never mark their bodies, so I'm going to pass. And I'm like,
The marker?
yes. That she was going to, like go home and show her kids, like she might have had like a little mark on her.
I think you
hand.
just should have put it on her breast or something where they wouldn't have seen it.
I was just so surprised by the answer. I'm like, I know we're Mormon. I know that we're not supposed to mark our temple, is what she said. I think she didn't say body. I think she said temple. But I'm like, this is not promoting tattoos necessarily.
Right.
Right. I just did not understand it. But what's hilarious was most of the people I marked, they would like lay on their hand and the next morning it ended up on their faces.
Maybe that's what she was afraid would happen, and she was just trying to make it sound good.
Well,
Maybe,
or she was like, look what the Holy Ghost did.
Exactly. So we were all marked the next day. We went to church and we have, all the people had marked, just like the Lamanites marked themselves.
That's right.
That's exactly what that story is about.
So did anyone else go around this conference doing something like that? Or was it just you?
No, I'm the only fun one.
Sure.
I'm
Let me
kidding.
tell you something
I'm
though.
kidding.
So Tony tells me about another one of these things.
Uh-huh.
And he says, yeah, people were, I guess apparently I don't remember the details, but like a couple different people were cuddling with a bunch of different people. And I was like, wait a second. What do you mean cuddling? And like, just like, apparently like, just like laying in bed, like having their arms around each other. And I said,
what else can we do? Okay. That disturbed me as well. Okay.
Yes.
So
I mean, it's fine. I guess it's on the scale of weird things. It's fairly low.
This was like a
were
year
these
and a
people
half
that
ago.
were dating or something?
No. Okay. I'll tell you exactly. Like,
okay.
I purposely obscured this so that you wouldn't get in trouble with anybody.
I don't, I told you I'm going to lose so many friends through this. I don't.
Okay.
And I don't feel like I'm not going to name any names. And, I feel bad about the last story because the person might watch, whatever. It was between us. We are the only two that know about it. And no one else at the event could ever guess who this person was. Right. So moving forward, like so in 2020, going into 2020, I had a goal to attend way more singles events than I had been previously. Well, than what happened in 2020. Right. So complete bust. And then 2021 rolled around. I said, okay, I'm going to do this again. Some restrictions have lifted. And so I decided to go to an event that was pretty far away. Now what I'm talking, okay, so there's a pretty big dividing line with the Mississippi. So we're talking about like single groups that are east of the Mississippi, single groups that are west of the Mississippi, they have no problem, like there's things going on all the time, but out here it's a little bit harder. You have to travel farther to get groups together. And this event that I went to, I was warned before I went to it that, hey, okay, people are going to be hugging and cuddling and being like really physical. And like, I'm like, do you mean like, yeah, with themselves, like people that, and they're like, no, with you, like you're new, they're going to want to cuddle with you. And I'm like, no, I don't want that at all. And it was bizarre. And I literally, for like a few seconds, I'm like, what did I get myself into? Is this some kind of bizarre swinger kind of thing? I don't know. What do we put keys like in a bowl and then go into the party, or what happens, And so there was, and at some point a woman, I'm not going to go into detail, but basically, she snuggled up right next to me. And I'm just like, and I was like, I kind of stiffed up a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. Like, I don't even know this person. Like, I just met them and they're snuggling with me. And so now I'm a little bit more used to it, because now it's like, I kind of get it, where if you've been in a committed relationship for years and you're used to physical affection of all different
Sure.
forms, all of a sudden you have none of it, and you can't go out and get it that easily, especially if we're talking about law of chastity, right? So going to these events, hugging, cuddling, being close, being flirty, it's all like very good and healthy, I think, for the singles. But then from an outsider's perspective, it just probably looks horrible or
All right, so
sounds
Tony,
horrible.
this leads me to something that I've talked about with you many times.
Oh, don't bring up the pictures again.
The what?
Go ahead.
Why are so many of the singles hesitant to get married again? I mean,
Are you kidding?
Okay. Here's where something we need to just get out there. Marriage is at least 50% luck.
It is.
When I met Charlotte,
It is.
okay, I had no idea that she was going to be great. She had no idea I was going to be fat and mentally
You were
ill.
going to be so as we really.
You get married and
you're fine.
and I'm not saying go find a random person, but I'm saying, if you're in a relationship with somebody, I am not sure. Is it because there's no living together?
I think once bitten, twice shy is a lot of it.
Because I
think
mean,
I said-
statistically, like yourself, you're 0 for 2.
Oh, stop it. Jeez,
No.
Louise.
So if you got married again, you have an 87.5% chance of success just based on numbers.
Steve, if we're going to get into it, I'm terrified. I am terrified.
Well,
I would
just don't wanna
imagine it
go
has
through it
something to.
again.
I'd imagine it would have something to do with having kids too. Like you'd want to be careful who you brought in.
Blending. Okay. So here's the thing, Steve. Say you bond with someone, you connect with someone instantly. It's
Yes.
magical, right? It's
Right.
just a beautiful thing. Well, then you got to deal with their a-hole kids. And what
No,
if you don't
sure.
get along with their kids? What if
Well,
you don't get
see,
along
and
with their parents?
right. I've thought to myself that if
There's-
I was single again, I wouldn't want to have people around my kids. Yes, I
I
understand.
mean, if we're talking about older children, and as I get older, then the women that I match with are older, and they're empty nesters at some of them, and that's wonderful. That's like a great situation, right? But then
Right.
sometimes you get with
Someone who's 3-year-old scratches your car.
Yes. So yeah, and then you're dealing with different parenting styles, and how that works, and then how well do each of your kids get along, so like there are some that it is almost magical, not only do they love each other, their kids love each other's kids, and they love each other's
Yeah.
kids, and then somehow their in-laws get involved, and that's all wonderful, and it's just this golden success, but it's rare. It's really rare.
Well, my father got married when I was 14 or 15, and we all hated each other. The kids all hated each other, and those kids would tell lies about us, at least about me. Every time I had a conversation with one of them, they'd go tell their mom that I had done something horrible. And I would end up, my dad would start yelling at me about it. And so I understand, that does make sense. I mean, people can do whatever they want to. If people are feeling that lonely, that seems really heartbreaking.
Well, if you don't triumph over loneliness, you're going to make mistakes. That's what happened to me. I was not prepared. I did not do the work to be alone. And because of that, I just jumped into a relationship. Like the first person that really gave me any kind of attention, I went for. Right.
Right.
And that's actually pretty darn accurate. I had gone, and this seems like ridiculous because it's such a short amount of time, but it was 8 months after my divorce was final. And I had been trying for at least 6 of those months seriously to try to find somebody, because that's all the time it took. I'm like 2 months. Okay, let's go,
Yeah.
and that's a ridiculously small amount of time. And so then I got into a bad situation, and then boom, divorce number 2. So I'm just not smart. So
Well, and like I said, and I don't want to sound insensitive.
well, that's just my
I
situation, right?
like I said, I don't want to sound insensitive.
It's hard to understand from an outsider's perspective, right?
Well,
Um,
and like I said, I mean, I got married and I got really lucky, but other people, I've got friends. A lot of my friends, I look at their wives and I think, oh man, no way, I would not be able to, you know.
Well, also, like, if we're really famous on short engagements in our church,
We are.
and you don't do. I have adopted the year rule or 4-season rule, whichever. Because I feel like you need to go through all different seasons, because especially here in winter in Michigan, winter is so long and so difficult to get through sometimes with seasonal effectiveness disorder.
Yeah.
Someone might change, you're not going to be out in the sun and the good weather and all that stuff. So plus, like, literally, like, every relationship that's ended for me has been because of some kind of difficult situation to get through. And so you have to really work, through a situation, and that will just destroy people sometimes. So you have to
Sure.
it's like that thing where, like, I would get worried if I knew a couple really, really well, and they were dating and getting engaged and all that, and they had never experienced a fight, never, not once, and they think that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing, right?
Well-
Like, you should be able to communicate through a fight, through a major dispute, through a major trauma or something that's going on, right?
Steve and I, when we were newlyweds, we had a couple, I think they came to our apartment for dinner.
No, we would.
No, I don't know.
They did come to. Who knows?
It doesn't matter. Well, you tell it. You're better at storytelling.
Well, they
No,
were.
Charlotte, we haven't
really
heard from you in a minute.
Yeah,
They were
shut up,
real-
Steve.
They were very. Go ahead and tell the story, honey. You're fine.
No, well,
She is fine.
so so they were over and they were telling us that they had never fought, they'd never even disagreed, and they just kept going on, and we're like, we disagree all the time, like like it's just part of, I don't know, we're two strong-willed, intelligent people that fight, or not like fight, but like disagree.
Sometimes fight.
And they were like, oh, we've never said a cross word to each other.
You know-
And after they left, Steve and I talked about it, and we're like, yeah, that's not good. That means one of them is literally always given into the other.
Well,
and the minute that person decides, like, I'm not going to do that anymore, it's whether it's a year down the road, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and you've taken over my life or whatever it is, they're going to end up divorced.
And I love how many times you just cut off Steve. I was enjoying
No,
every
that is
single
fine.
time you did it.
That is fine. I was just going to point out that, Charlotte, I don't know how well you remember the couple, but he was. They were both very nice. He was not like a jerk or a mean guy, but he had a big personality. He just had a really strong personality. Really, again, good guy. But his wife was very meek.
Is there always a sub and a dom in a relationship?
Well, in ours, I think Charlotte would be the dom, right? You and
I are pretty even.
You always get your way.
No, not always.
So that
Although
actually,
I will say this, look how good my kids know me. Brett went to the store and he brought me back a Reese cup and a Coke.
I like how much they were blurred out.
I am a little spoiled by my
Steve, I didn't even
family.
tell you. Steve, we're getting sponsorships for the podcast.
What does that mean?
Like, people have approached me and asked me if we can air an ad, and we can they can sponsor the podcast.
For like what kind of ad?
For alopecia.
Asshole.
Wait, what?
For some reason, it's only been alopecia and Viagra. I don't know why.
Well, I can
they
swear
see
by
Steve.
Viagra.
They just see Steve and they're just thinking that guy needs our help.
Tony, I don't know you. Well, I guess you haven't been with anyway. It doesn't matter. But when the time comes and you realize age has caught up to you, I am telling you, Viagra is a great blessing. Charlotte, tell them how great it is.
Okay, moving on. So Steve, have either of you watched Breaking Bad?
I've
I
not.
don't really watch TV.
Really?
It's not sci-fi, so I'm not into it.
Okay. You know about Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Of course, yes.
Okay. So I rewatched it, and I think the first time I was kind of picking up on it, but then the second time I watched it, I realized that most of this show is about the power dynamic of a couple or inside of a couple's relationship. There's almost 100%, like 98%
Yeah.
of the show is their relationship and the power struggle between these two people. And again, this is another thing that Steve taught me about, is that there's always a power struggle within a relationship. Now, that was one of his kind of like shocking things to say, Steve always, and he would say always, or it's all, and I don't know, I'm curious, is it really always a power struggle within a relationship?
Well, I mean, until it's settled, and you will have various areas of a relationship where one partner will be clearly, we talk about who's dominant and who's the sub. And the truth is that it is about, depend on the subject. In different areas, Charlotte gets her way 100% of the time. In other areas, I get my way maybe 20% of the time.
Shut up.
No, I'm kidding. So in other areas, I really,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think like,
that's
a
a
good
rule of ours, actually. That
Well,
like
yeah,
whoever's more passionate about it, if it's not really that important to you, you let it go and you
yeah, I
let the other
stole
one
that
have
from
it.
Covey. Covey has that rule.
Mhm.
And that's served us very well, where like if we're disagreeing about something, we say, how important is it to you? And if the one person says a 9 and the other person says a 4, then the person who says 9 wins. But even within that, Ms. Center, there are a couple of areas where it's probably pretty important to both of us.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to get into that particular personal information, but I mean, some things you are definitely, you get your way, and some things I definitely get mine.
So we've come to just around an hour in the podcast. And I want to make sure that Charlotte, that you get some time to talk about whatever you want, question, ask us anything, bring up any subject.
You didn't tell your darkest moment. You had us do it, and
I
then like
knew-
you just kind of skirted it a few times.
I knew you were going to remember.
I'm curious.
I don't know if I can talk about it.
Well, then maybe the second darkest.
Well, I actually have I have a lot. I would
Really?
say, as I started thinking about it, it is so odd that this stuff came up today, the podcast came up today with the subjects, because I was literally thinking these things today. I was thinking that I don't feel like my life has been overly normal, especially when you compare it to growing up in the church. And I say that not to say that everyone in the church is the same, not to say that everyone has the same story, but I just feel like, and of course you don't know everyone's stories, right?
Right.
But it seems very idyllic. Idyllic, is that right? And I don't know, I've gone through some crazy things. Things are not normal. But by far, as far as true struggle, like major depression, stuff that I really had to pull myself up from my bootstraps, as they say, and really just get out of bed every day and make sure I worked and just kept going, was probably, see, I didn't want to mention it because we haven't really talked about my story a lot. I don't really necessarily feel like telling stories that paint people in a bad light. I do it a lot, I guess, but this is more personal. There was a time period when Sarah moved away with the kids. It wasn't exactly legal. It came out of the blue. I didn't know it. It was very unplanned. I wasn't involved in the planning. And then all of a sudden, like within 2 weeks, the kids were gone out of my life. And there's some backstory, because there's a lot of backstory to it. But nonetheless, I was in Michigan, kids were in Utah. And so it was instantly difficult. Because I had spent some time away from them. That's the thing. It's hard. There's a lot of background to it. but that story hasn't really been told, hasn't really been explained. So I'm just going to go forward with the situation where it's just, that's what it was. I was away from the kids, and it felt like I didn't really have a choice in the matter. Plus, on top of it, I was calling like 35, 40 times a week to even try to get a hold of them, and I could not. So it was like, it wasn't just that they were away in a distance, but there was just no communication at all. And every time I called and I got a voicemail, I'd leave like the same kind of thing, like, hey, I miss you, I'm thinking about you. And you know, it just broke you down slowly. Every time you'd call and leave a voicemail, and you just wondered if they were hearing it, you know. There was just a time I was literally just walking through the parking lot of a gas station, and I started thinking about the kids, and I literally fell to my knees and just started crying in public. You know,
Aw.
it was just a complete breakdown, and it just came out of nowhere. I didn't know where it had come from. I didn't know what triggered it. It was just there, and I was just processing it. And that was that was a pretty low point, and I had to keep going. I had to keep, you know, day to day. And I think what's hard about it, what's hard talking about it, is there's this idea, I think, on, I'm sorry, because I know Charlotte, like, you're friends with her. I just, it feels uncomfortable to talk about it. But I think there's this idea on her side that I have no feelings for our children, that I don't care, that, you know, I wasn't a good father, or that I'm not a good father. And there's, you know, telling the story, it's fake, it's a lie, but yet obviously it's real. It's super real to me. It was very difficult to go through.
Hmm.
Well, that sounds terrible.
That would be hard to be away from your kids.
Yeah, but
Be
you know,
really
it's like,
hard.
it seems so hard to talk about because I divorced her. You guys know my story. I divorced
Yeah.
her. How is it possible that I'm feeling all this and going through all this? Right? It just doesn't seem logical.
Well, but I mean, trauma is trauma. I mean, it doesn't matter how it was initiated, it's still trauma, and we can't get away from being impacted by it.
It just seems self-inflicted in some weird way.
Well, and
And
I mean,
then it seems disingenuous.
but you know what? I mean, sure, a lot of our trauma probably is self-inflicted, but the the other choice then is to wrap ourselves up in a bubble, and we never communicate with anybody, and then we're safe. It doesn't
Well,
work.
that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to stop calling because it hurt so much to get that voicemail every single time.
Mhm.
Right. But I had to keep pressing forward. And I made my calls like clockwork, you know, to make sure that the kids knew that I was calling.
So what ended up happening?
You know, I would get Jillian every once in a while, and she was she was like, you know, 4. And to try to communicate, it was just, I mean, it was good, but the quality of conversation wasn't high. And she'd keep me on the phone for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it was good, but it also hurt because I'd say, so, you know, is so and so there? And you'd hear her take the phone to so and so, and they'd say, Dad's on the phone, and they'd say, no, I don't want, you know, you could hear them, you know, denying the phone call. It's like, oh man, that hurts so much. And then you
Mm.
start questioning everything. You know, like, what did I do? You know, what could I have done better as a dad? Like, my kids don't even want to get on the phone and say hi.
Mm.
I worked so much as a young father. I worked so much.
Yeah, but so Tony, so did I. It gets held against you, but you don't have a choice. I mean,
I
it
didn't
wasn't
have a choice. It's either I work or we starve.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't like
Yeah.
when I was out working, I was, you know, having this, you know, big fun time. My wife would say, you know, all these people all day, they praise you and say these nice things about you. And I'd be like, where the hell are they? I want to meet these people saying these nice things about me.
Well,
You
there
know,
is a
so that I can
cycle
be
to it,
around
you know.
them.
No, I mean, I think that was kind of part of the conversation earlier. Do we have another surprise guest on the show?
Well, my nephew has got no volume control, and he started taking to walking around in just his underwear. It's really unsettling.
That's awesome.
He
So,
did.
no,
I'm
I
sure
was
he did.
curious, you know, like, Charlotte, there was a time when you were at home, right?
Uh,
And Steve was out working, and he worked a lot. And I felt like Sarah and I were in that same exact situation. And there's this cycle. There's like this, man, I lost the word for it, but it's like she was, not envious, but it's, Steve, help me out. What is it? Let's
Well,
like
maybe jealous of the
a little bit of
beginning
jealousy,
out.
whatever you want to call it, like envious. She was envious that I was, out away from like, yeah, this adult world, where you have this interaction with adults, and it was horrible. Like going out, like all I wanted to do was be at home with the kids, and then all she wanted to do was be out, like working like I was, and we both like, we both had, each of us were fighting this constant circle of, yeah, it was horrible.
You know what though? She was so good at finding things to do. I was never that creative. Like go here with the kids, go there with the kids. I wasn't I guess I wasn't as interesting of a mom. But I know for me, it was like I literally, this sounds absolutely terrible. And maybe it's because I'm not as creative as some other people, but we often only had one car when Steve was the only one working.
Yeah.
So we didn't always even have a second car. So that wasn't even really like an option. Like if my mom came and picked me up, we would go somewhere kind of thing a lot of the time. But I pretty much just waited my day until he got home because that's like when my date felt like it started. And because the rest of the time it was just trying to like keep things clean, trying to find things to keep the kids occupied, trying to find things to stimulate me. And I think that's the reason why I ended up doing like PTO, running for city council, doing scouts and all these different things and callings. I threw myself into callings because it was something to feed that. And I'll never forget, Steve said, he's like, you know what? You say you want to work, but you're going to hate it. And I have loved it.
Yes. So, and
it fit me and I knew it would, but yeah, I
That-
know it really is hard to stay at home, but then I would see Steve come home exhausted, which I do now, and he wouldn't want to go anywhere. And like now I get home and like Steve's like, you want to go somewhere? I'm like, no.
No, exactly.
No, we're just I think we're both just living such different lives, and it makes it hard to understand like what the other one went through. But how
Right.
else do you do it when you have kids? You can't afford daycare.
No, I mean,
We talked about it and we're like, if I went to work, we would essentially be paying for me to go to work.
One
Right.
area where this really showed itself was on the weekends. Weekend would come and I'd tired from because I usually work more than one job.
Yep.
Charlotte wants to go. She wants to do stuff. She's been waiting all week to have fun. And so now we both hate doing stuff on the weekend.
perfect.
And
It's
you know
Even
who
Steven.
doesn't? Camden.
Oh,
That
Camden,
child
God,
wants
that
to
kid.
be on the road at all times. What are we gonna do? Let's
Mm.
go.
That
like,
kid
dude,
is
you need to
a
get a
bundle
job.
of energy.
That kind of, I identify with that because I think that's one thing that Sarah really resented of me is because when Saturday rolled around, that was a time when we all went to work, and there was a ton of work because I working 12, 14-hour days all week long, I couldn't keep up with XYZ. And then we all got together, I gathered everyone and said, no, before we go do this, we have to clean this and we have to work on this. And yeah, I get it. You can look back at it now and realize like, oh, she was like so bored at home. She was, just tired of being around kids.
And I'll be honest, it was depressing.
Yeah.
For me, it was depressing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so Steve would come home and he would be like, well, what happened today? Like as if we were having fun all day.
You know what? And
I know.
I get mad at myself when I think about how little empathy I had. I really, I get it now. Now I
Right.
understand what she was experiencing and what we weren't connecting on. But at the time, I had, it really makes me mad when I think about, I would obnoxiously point out, rooms that were messy and that kind of thing, as though she hadn't cleaned the same room over and over and over.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
It's as I say, but it's the story that I think is true for most young, younger married people that have kids, where you're trying to,
Right.
one of the parents have to work a lot because they're trying to keep the house going and keep everything going. And because childcare is so expensive, the other one does that and loves it, but also hates it. And yeah, it's
Right.
just, I think it's a sad dynamic, but I think for me, the thing was like, I stayed busy with things at church and friends, like having Sarah and Sarah,
Mhm.
they got me out to do things because they were, let's be honest, they're both much more creative than me and cook better and all that stuff, and they go outside and do outdoorsy things. um but as soon as Camden went to school all day, I went upstairs, I applied for a job, I got said job, and I was able to have like my turn. And I was lucky that I got that turn when I was still young enough that I never like resented the whole thing,
I
if
see.
that makes sense.
It
But I
does.
think so some, I've seen some women though that like they find it hard to find that thing that they're passionate about after the kids do start to get older.
Sure.
And then they just feel like they gave up so much time
For what?
not pursuing what they really wanted to pursue. And so I feel like I just got lucky that I kind of landed into something that I had a passion for,
Very
and
blessed.
ended up loving.
Yes.
I think that leads to a lot of divorce, to be honest,
Sure.
because
mean-
if that resentment doesn't get resolved, or if like if I said I was going back to work, because Steve did, he's like, you'll hate it. But if he'd really like not supported me as much as he did, which he did totally, I think he liked me getting a paycheck. It would have been easy to have just not done it, not put into it what I needed to.
Well, I think
I
that
was
came up
blessed.
in our first podcast, I think, Steve, that I kind of started talking a little bit about, the what ifs. What if I had stuck it out just a little bit longer
Sure.
until Sarah, left the house and started working, how much happier she might have been. Kind of like your situation. I felt like you guys are just a little bit older than we are, and gotten to that point where the kids were older, and what if I had stuck it out just a little bit longer, because I think Sarah's happiness would have greatly improved. Like, that was the biggest mistake that we had made. And I say we, because I'm just going to say we, that we didn't realize that Sarah was not the stay-at-home mom type.
Well, I don't know.
wasn't.
I don't know how many, let's just be really honest, how many young ladies growing up today, and we're not that old. I mean, how many in my wife's generation really were,
Tell the temple story, Steve. Tell the temple story real quick.
I don't
When
know
you
the story.
first got sealed to Charlotte, and you sat down to an older gentleman in the temple, and he gave you the best advice in the world.
Charlie, you remember this? She did our wedding reception.
Okay.
The
Mans.
Mans, they're dead
Yeah.
now, so we can talk about them.
They were very sweet.
They were very
rule.
sweet.
The podcast rule.
She was probably in her 60s, but he was 80. He was 10 or 15 years older than her.
Oh.
And sure, I'm sure you'll remember this. We were sitting in the temple, before the ceiling. I don't remember at what point, but he was sitting next to me, and he said, Steve, he said, do not do the things that women should do in the marriage. Don't do laundry. Don't help with dishes. He said,
That's women's work.
That is for women to do, and men doing it has hurt marriage. Now, that was terrible advice, but it's terrible advice. And I should say, and he did have a point that, that women they're no longer trained to to grow up to be a stay-at-home mom. What have we trained Paige to do? Paige, anything that she knows how to do is because she's figured it on her own. We've trained Paige to go find her joy in her career and her bliss. And this is what parents do.
Trained sounds like that's a horrible word to use. Trained?
When you're talking about your kids?
I know, it's just, well, I mean, trained to be a stay-at-home mom.
Well, that is terrible, Tony. And that's
know.
what nobody does anymore.
It just sounds horrible. Like, but
and so
these
poor sisters get stuck, many of whom, if we could have done it all over, Charlotte has, as I've noted, been much more successful at making money than I have. And she probably should have been the one to work. Well, I really am pretty good at managing the household.
Well,
Now, I really would not have taken care of the kids at all.
you know what though? You are amazing with them now. I was amazing when they were little. I'm still amazing with them. But no, you are so like
Well,
the
this is my
advice giver,
wheelhouse.
the making sure they do what they're supposed to do, and they love it.
But see,
They
that's
love it.
I believe the same exact thing for Sarah and I. Like, she should have been the one to go out and make the money, and I would have, been over the household, and I would not have been great with the kids in certain fields. But then she gets to come home, and as soon it's fun time. It's fun time with mom,
Mm.
and she was great at that. She was great at fun time with the kids, and creative, like you said, coming up with the games, and she could have just
Yeah.
come home, relaxed, and just had fun with the kids, and then they would have gotten that kind of fulfillment that way.
Well, and I think that's the thing though, because like Steve is really good at managing things. I can't tell you the last time I did a load of laundry, and that's because I'm a terrible homemaker. I can't cook worth anything.
Nope, she can't cook at
And
all.
it's just the truth. It's the truth. But I'm really good at like organizing and leading and doing the things I do.
You know what it
And
is? Charlotte is just extremely intelligent. She really took a page, an old, play from the Book of Man, where she screws everything up just so she doesn't have to do it again.
no, I literally can't even make like oatmeal cookies. Like it's bad. It's bad. But like I think I recognized early on that I needed a different outlet, because believe me, no one loves their kids more than me. They're like everything, but I needed something in addition to that. And I recognized it. And that's why I did so many different things that I did in the community. But there are some women who they are like Steve, like they're so amazing at managing the home. And I think it's just a matter of figuring out which one you are.
I
Yeah.
am not a respecter of classic gender roles.
Well, I tell you what, I wish we hadn't been. Now, I know we're running out of time. I do have I've held this back. One final piece of advice on relationships. Everybody needs to write this down. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
The reason why Charlotte and our relationship works is we're both in love with the same
Steven.
woman.
I knew he was going to say that. That's his joke he always says.
You're both in love with the same woman.
I thought he was going to say something like really cool, but no.
No,
I
he
thought
just
that
sticks with
was
this.
cool. I've
You know
spent
what-
I've been in love with that woman for the last 31 years, and she's been in love with that woman, the same woman, for the same amount of, longer than that.
Longer
Yeah.
since she
Stop
first
it.
saw a mirror.
No.
No, you guys
That's
are
not
both
true.
wonderful. I'm so thankful that Charlotte, that you are our first guest. I think that's great.
I thought this went really well.
It was fun hanging out with you guys.
It's been
Yeah.
a while. It's
It has
funny
been a
when,
while.
when we would go out with Tony, me, and Sarah, I would tell Sarah she was the third wheel.
Oh, wait,
I
I
thought
just
you'd-
got that. Like
I
it took
thought
me a
you'd-
minute to process it.
I thought you'd say, Sarah, you'd make a great third wife.
Oh no, I would not say that to anybody.
I have to say that literally, and Steve and I still talk about this. You guys are like one of the few couples where we both liked both of you. Usually like one of you likes one and then like you're like
That's
tolerate
what
the
we
other.
talked about. Yeah.
But,
So
yeah.
I think a great podcast would be to have her on and her new husband.
Let's do
Her
it.
new husband.
Oh,
Charlotte, can I say one thing?
huh.
You really are very beautiful.
Well, thank
He
you.
is.
Thank you. I have to say, I terribly miss Sarah. We've not really got to hang out or talk.
Can't really
much.
help you out there.
Huh?
I can't really help you out there.
We live far apart and we both are in the same industry, which is very daunting.
Time consuming.
Time consuming. Yes.
It is. I don't have, obviously, she's my ex-wife. But I have tried to not stay away or stray away from complimenting her.
Mhm.
She's amazing, and I'm very proud of her. I've never obviously said this to her, but I'm very proud of her efforts. You and her are very similar as far as, taking on these new careers, coming from staying at home and it's really, you're both very impressive, and I appreciate you both very much.
My dream is someday
In that
she'll
way,
be the
should I say.
director of
I
nursing
appreciate-
in my building.
What's that?
My dream is someday she'll be the director of nursing in my building.
That's great. Yeah.
And then we'll be on the phone constantly talking about who did what and how we're
I
going
think
to
it'd
fix
be a
it.
good match.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I'm not gonna like I said, I'm not gonna not say things that I think are true, and I think you're both very hardworking women, and I really appreciate that. I have a lot of appreciation for hardworking women. So one thing that I have not really and Charlotte, thanks again.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else before we kind of go into the conclusion? Okay.
No, I think I've talked way too much.
Okay. So I don't do this enough, but so Steve, we're well on our way to monetizing this channel. We are, I monitor the analytics, and all we need is 4,000 views and 1,000 subscribers, and we're skyrocketing towards those
Right,
numbers.
we're like at 15 now.
I mean, at some point we can retire, and we can do this. This is our retirement plan. So anyone who's listening, please subscribe, please like, and please leave a comment. And that's really, I'm going to focus more on comments, because ask us questions, give us
Disagree
topics.
with us.
Disagree with us. That'd be great if we had some haters.
I mean, you don't even have to hate us. I mean, you hate Tony, obviously. That's
obviously.
Kind of
well, I'm used to it. A lot of people hate me.
But I mean, I think we are prone to say things, be fairly opinionated, and it's okay to disagree.
Yeah, and we've talked about not alienating our audience. I think we're going to go full bore alienation.
Yes.
So we're going to build this whole channel up, and then we're just going to try to destroy it.
Well, we're going to start next podcast is all the people we hate.
Yeah. So next podcast, I don't know about focusing on all the people we hate. There is someone that I really have enjoyed getting to know. I love her to death. She's one of my good friends. Her name's I'm not going to reveal her name, even though
make sure that all works out.
Yeah, we're going to she's agreed to do the podcast, so we're going to have possibly her next, but we definitely need to have our boys on at some point.
Well, I was thinking we should make that a monthly thing, and we should really, well, we can talk about this off air, but we should start with the four of us.
Yeah.
So
not like a third person every time, but we're just going to go full bore into like,
I think in the next week or two, we need to have what I alone, because the rest of you are losers, referred to as the core four.
Come on, man.
None of the rest of you would buy into that, but I thought it was a great
Who are the core
slogan.
four? Who would that be?
I can name the
Thompson.
core four. First of all, it's Judd Case, it's Thompson.
Yeah.
And then it's got to be maybe Pyra.
No, it's you and me. There's four of us.
Oh,
dumbass.
Somebody's bad at math.
No. I instantly excluded myself. I thought you meant the core four was like the original. You called it the Professors Club.
Well, that was, yes, but that was intermittent, very sparse. When it really became a thing that we did regularly, it was because the kids got a little older.
Yeah.
All right, Tony.
All right,
we
man.
did great. Charlotte May, you look good. Why don't you come on upstairs and I'll get you something to drink.
Sounds good.
Love you guys. Great time. Appreciate it. And Charlotte, we always appreciate anything that you can help us, or any criticisms that you can help us to improve the podcast. Okay.
I'll give it some thought.
All right. Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.